Hi, this is Blake, and this is an introduction to mapping with JOSM. In this particular video, we're just going to look at the user interface of JOSM. We're not really going to do very much mapping. We're just going to describe what the user interface looks like and how it's used. This is going to be in the context of HOT mapping, so I'm going to go ahead and check out a task square just to give myself the interface in JOSM that you're going to typically see if you're doing HOT mapping. So I have a task square selected. I say Start Mapping. If yours does not say Edit with JOSM, you would click on this pop-down menu and select Edit with JOSM. But once I do that, it automatically sends to JOSM the area that I am responsible for mapping, and that's this large open area. I don't have any imagery selected yet, so you don't see any imagery. And then the crosshatch area here, this is not part of my task square, so I don't have to worry about that. You might have seen in the ID editor a purple square. This is the equivalent of that purple square, and it just shows an open area, and then there's crosshatch where that's not part of your task area. So let's just take a quick look at the actual interface here. Probably the most important part of this interface are the mapping tools, which is what these set of icons are here. And I'm just going to go ahead and highlight those if I can. So these are the tools that you'll use for actually mapping. This is the selection tool, which just gives you a standard pointer that you can see, which lets you click on objects and select them. I'm going to use the mouse wheel to zoom in. There's not really a plus and a minus button like you might have seen in ID. It's primarily the mouse wheel is the best way to zoom in. So I'm going to go ahead and use the mouse wheel to zoom in. And you drag and move by using the right mouse button. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. So I'm clicking and holding on the right mouse button to drag my screen around. Because I have the selection tool, I could go ahead and click on an object and select it, and then I could move that object around if I wanted to. But to move my viewport, which is what this whole window is called, you use the right mouse button to actually click and hold and then drag around with that right mouse button held down. And it's the left mouse button that you use to select individual things. The next set of tools or the next set of icons that are below the actual drawing icons, these icons here actually control what displays over on this other side of the screen. So these are panels that you can turn on and off. So you can see there's a panel up here that's labeled Layers. There's a panel that's labeled Tags and Membership. And then there's what's called the Selection panel down here. And if you look carefully, you can see there's three icons, and they sort of are depressed or not depressed to indicate. But you click on these things to turn on and off the panels over here. So if I hover, maybe it'll tell me. That's the tag panel. So if I click on it, it made my tag panel disappear. I click back on it, and it makes my tag panel come back. This is true for the selection list window as well. Any of these things. And you can add ones that are not on here. So this is all relations, which we won't worry about. Small map of the current editing location. I don't think I've ever turned that one on. Interesting, the mini map. Turn that panel off. List of all the commands. This is kind of your undo, step back. And then there's some other things here which I would not worry about. You basically want layers, tags, and what's selected. That's really what you want to worry about. Now, looking at the panels over here on the right-hand side, you can see we have layers, tags, and selected. Right now, there's a data layer. This is where all of this information resides. So all of the actual map information is part of this data layer. There's no imagery yet. So I'm going to go up here to the imagery menu, and I'm just going to select Bing imagery. And you're going to see that it gets added as another layer over in the layers panel. And now you can actually see the imagery, and you can see it got added as a layer. You can turn on and off layers. So I can, click this on and off and click off on and off this. So you could have multiple layers. You can also do some fading between the different layers if you wanted to, as well as sharpen and change the color and that sort of thing. But the important thing to realize is that this layers panel displays what layers you have open. The green check mark, this indicates where I'm editing. So I'm editing on this data layer. You can't do any sort of mapping unless you have a data layer selected and in here. So I have a data layer. This was automatically added from the tasking manager. I went ahead and added the Bing imagery layer. And so now I'm basically ready to start mapping if I wanted to start mapping. But we're just talking about interface. So let's keep looking at the user interface. This area up here, these are two pretty important buttons as well. So I'm just going to highlight these two buttons. These are download data from OpenStreetMap and upload data to OpenStreetMap. So once you're done mapping and you use your mapping tools, you use the standard mapping tools. So you could come in here and I'm going to click on, this is the add tool, by the way. Unlike ID, there's only one tool for adding things. ID has area, ways, and points, like 3 different tools. JOSM doesn't have 3 different tools. It has one tool, and that's this. And you add points by just double-clicking to put a point someplace. You add ways or roads by clicking and then going along whatever it is. So let's say I was doing a residential area, and that makes an area. So a way is just, you always double-click to end. So a way is just an unclosed line. But to actually make, I'm going to go ahead and click the selection tool again. But to make like a closed-in area or a building or something like that, all you do is make sure that you close it up, and then that turns it into an area. So we don't have 3 separate tools. We have one tool that we just use 3 different ways. We double-click to add a point. We just sort of draw a line, double-click to finish, or you can draw an area by just making sure, and you see it kind of snaps to it, by just closing up, and that's how you make an area. So one tool, 3 things. Once, if I were all done, let's say that I had done some real mapping, I went ahead and I did a couple of buildings or whatever it was, then I would come over here and I would use the upload button. This is the same as like save in ID. So I'm going to click on the upload button. Okay. So much like ID, it does a little bit of checking, and this tells me that I have some errors that I should fix. I have 4 ways that I drew here that have no other tags. So those are problems, and then there's some other nodes that are untagged as well. I'm going to ignore these for now. Normally I would fix them, but I'm just going to say continue. And then this is where I would put in my comments about whatever I had done, and there'll be a default. Matter of fact, this is the default from the tasking manager sent this over, so I usually add a little something at the end. Added a residential area. The layers that I used was Bing, so it recognized that I had the Bing layer. And after that's all done, I would click on Upload Changes, which I'm not going to do because these are not real mapping. So I'm just going to click on Cancel. But that's essentially the interface that you need to be concerned with. These are the actual mapping tools, and you really select is what you use so that you can grab things and move them. If I had to edit this so that it fit a little better, if I were doing some sort of an area and I wanted it to match, I would use the select tool. You can obviously grab things and move them completely. Individual nodes you can move to adjust things, or you can grab the line itself. The little X's here, these indicate that if I grab there, I'll actually add a new node. These are the panels. These switch on and off the panels on this side, and these are the panels that I'm concerned about. And those are my upload and my download tools. And that's really the basics of the interface. These are presets that you're just like in JOSM, or ID rather. There's also a preset menu I could search, but the key things are select, drawing, turn on and off the panels, and then what's in the panels. So thanks very much, and our other videos will actually talk about how to really map.